So, how would you describe your role at Clemson?
Oh, so my role at Clemson is actually multifaceted. So I'm a professor. I'm actually the Hilliard Professor of Environmental Sustainability at Clemson, which is part of an endowed chair's position here at Clemson. So I teach. Obviously, I really like teaching, and I feel it's probably the most important thing I do at Clemson is interacting with students. I also serve on graduate student committees at Clemson and serve in the Department of Forestry and Environmental Conservation. But I additionally have another full-time job, which is director at the South Carolina Botanical Garden. So I'm in charge of all of the fiduciary and all of the operational procedures and planning everything for the South Carolina Botanical Garden, which is a 295-acre garden here in Clemson, South Carolina. I'm also the director of the Clemson Experimental Forest, so I have those thousands of acres as well to work with and be responsible for, and director of the Bob Campbell Geology Museum. So my role is both working with the general public, serving the general public, providing education through all of our outreach, all of our educational programming that we have for the general public, and also just creating a place that actually is a garden for life, a garden where we educate people just simply by visiting as well.
What do you think your first big step into your career was? How did you first get started and get interested in the field of environmentalism?
Sure. So, well, I don't remember a time when I wasn't interested in it. So, from the time I was an itty bitty kid, I was lucky to have a grandmother and a mother very supportive, and my grandmother was really interested in plants. So she was actually one of the better botanists I ever knew, despite the fact she only went through 8th grade in school. She used scientific names, used to read me, used to read me the Flora of the Carolinas rather than Dr. Seuss. So I've always been interested in it. Making a break into the field was really much more difficult. Part of my career I didn't mention is I've done television for 15 years and radio for over 20 years. And all of that through public radio and public television. And I have been successful, but success came very late in my career. So it's not an easy field to step into and to be able to make a reasonable living at, and that's part of the challenge. So I come in from a huge family. There's 16 of us total, brothers and sisters, and Appalachian family, and pretty poor, very poor. Didn't have a lot of help. So I went through school, and I started knowing I wanted to become a botanist, knowing I wanted to do plant science, but I didn't actually achieve that first. I actually got interested in English and literature and history and all different kinds of things, as a lot of crazy hippie college kids did back then, and ended up getting my 3rd degree actually in biology, bachelor's degree from the University of North Carolina. And first break in, gosh, I worked as an aquarist. I worked as an ichthyologist, a mammologist, an ornithologist, just about everything there is to do other than botany, because jobs were that difficult to find. And my first real break, I guess, was when I left teaching public school to take a job here at Clemson back in 1999. To become the curator of the herbarium here. I still didn't make anything for money, and I didn't have a PhD at that point, but it gave me a real opportunity to come in and be able to step into a university setting, which was really important to establish both my credibility and to get my voice heard. So that was probably it.
Already talked about this, how difficult it was to kind of break into the field, but what would you consider one of your greatest challenges in your career to kind of get you to this point? What was a big hurdle for you?
Communication. Yeah. So I was really shy as a young person, and had some challenges, learning challenges like dyslexia, and so I never really wanted to stand up and talk in front of anybody. And being able to present publicly and being able to have confidence in knowing that I know what I know, and to speak with confidence and to speak with persuasion, is probably the biggest challenge. And for me, kind of the turning point came was back in like 2002 when the Department of Natural Resources had asked me to come in and survey a section of land in the Jocassee Gorges that they were planning to build the Palmetto Trail through. That one little survey in Jocassee Gorges, I found over 600 rare plant and animal populations. I found 9 new species for South Carolina, and it's this incredible place called Wataco Mountain, which is this really unique geology and just so bizarrely different from anything else in the mountains of North or South Carolina that it just blew my mind. And so then I had to actually communicate that. Like I had to go to DNR Heritage Trust Board meeting and tell people why the mountain was important. And I had to convince the public that it was important and, persuade people to maybe change their mind about what the land management for that site and what the land management overall for Jocassee Gorges was. And I really found my voice there.
What would you consider to be like one of your greatest accomplishments, or like what's something part of your career that you're like most proud of?
I'd have to say that, I'm really proud about Expeditions, our television program we did for 15 years. We reached a lot of households. We had a national audience. And we won 6 Emmy Awards for that program and a number of Telly Awards and other things. It was decorated, but more than that, what I'm proud of is we did that show for 15 years and got into markets all across the country and all across the world on a very, very meager budget. And most of the time it was a 2 or 3 man operation. And what I really am proud of with that program is that we were able to take a program to people where it wasn't just, which shark can eat the bigger shark and watch me wrestle down a bear, or do something really stupid with wildlife. It really was keyed in on understanding how each individual's choice, how humans and our choice really impacts the world forever.
What do you see like for the next generation of environmentalists, and like what do you think is the reason that you've stayed so passionate about it through so many years?
Well, so I have a good friend, Gus Speth. He was the dean of School of Forestry up at Yale, and he's a little older than me. He's from Roseville, South Carolina. And I interviewed him years ago when I did a TV special on climate change for PBS. And he said something that was really interesting during that interview. He was like, our generation didn't get it done. Like, we dropped the ball. And now it's up to you. And I think that every generation, as they get to be middle-aged or older, kind of has that feeling, it's easy to become dismayed and think that even though I've spent all my life trying to get people to realize that something as simple as maybe accepting holes in their leaves on their oak trees rather than spraying it with pesticides can make the difference between having pollinators in the landscape or not, which makes the difference between our quality of life for generations into the future. And even though I've had some success, it's also still continuing to be a problem. And I went through a whole period in my life where I was really depressed about what was going on, because it's easy to get overwhelmed with the bad news. But then, just for instance, you'll get some classes, like for this year's class. You guys are heads and shoulders above classes I've had in the last couple of years. When I ask questions, you're responding. You give me answers. And there's a lot of passion in this new group of ENR students I see coming through the university. And I think those kind of things, and constantly being exposed to people like yourself that are coming into the field and you still have that unbridled optimism, helps to maintain that youthful optimism in those of us who work with you.
Is like a part of your job that you really like to talk about, but you feel like not a lot of people ask about, or something that like...
I can tell you what our biggest challenge is. This is hands down, absolutely 100% of our biggest challenge revolves around how to address climate issues.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've, in my career, we've gone from moving global warming to climate change to the climate crisis. And all you have to do is look out the window here at the Botanical Garden. And you can see that the whole plant palette that we use at the Botanical Garden is completely different than what it was 25 years ago. And you know what? In 25 years, it's going to have to be completely different again. And we're seeing these massive changes. Those of us who are botanical garden directors, we see them happening in controlled landscapes. But those of us who also are ecologists and are spending time working in forest systems are seeing, wholesale changes of ecosystems from threats that are only exacerbated by climate change. So, the change just since I started working in this field in our natural communities is it's appalling. It's unbelievable just how much worse everything is. And I truly myself see the evidence and see, my own empirical observations of the world around me, and can tell you that we wouldn't have the problems that we have today. That you're going to face at a much greater and more intense level than my generation faced, if it wasn't for our failure to address climate issues. So it's something that's so political, and it's something that's so difficult to talk about with the general public, but it's incumbent on us to talk about it if we care about anything.
Yeah.
Because from invasive species to you name it, everything's made worse by what we're seeing in terms of the massive shifts and massive volatility that we're introducing into our native habitats.
Yeah. That's like one piece of advice that you have for those looking to get a career in ENR.
To get a career in ENR, you've got to find what you're most passionate about. For me, I dreamed that I would be stuck like in a basement in an herbarium, only talking to dead plants and doing research, and I thought that would be the dream job. But it turned out that my passion really lied in communication. And when you find like what you're really friggin' good at, do that. It doesn't matter if there's a job for it or not. Every job I have at Clemson, I've created through my passion. It's not been something where I've been needed to fill a vacant role. It's something where I've created those things through my passion. So that's what I tell everybody about everything they ever want to do is like, if you're passionate about it, you will succeed.
Yeah.
For our job search, we decided to look into a wildlife biologist position. This position is offered by the United States National Park Service and has openings all over the United States. The average pay for this position is around $25 an hour and is considered non-supervisory. So, what can a Clemson student do to ensure that they stand out in the competition?
Receiving a bachelor's degree in biological science is ideal. Clemson's wildlife biology degree features a minimum of 9 semester hours in wildlife subjects. Courses fulfilling these requirements include mammalogy, ornithology, animal ecology, and wildlife management.
A minimum of 12 semester hours is needed to concentrate in zoological sciences. Classes offered at Clemson include vertebrate zoology and comparative anatomy. It is important to note that excess wildlife courses can also be used to fulfill zoology requirements.
12 semester hours in botany or plant-related sciences are recommended. Dendrology, field botany, and plant physiology all cover this requirement.
Just like for all jobs, it is important to complete internships or work as a volunteer in related positions. This will definitely help you stand out in the competition. Internship opportunities are posted in many buildings all over campus and online. A quick Google search for Clemson internships will grant you access to all kinds of positions.